Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are nearing the finish of our day. We have been in 6 hours of fantastic industry training by another industry experts. We've had 21 industry experts. This last session is going to be really inspirational and telling on where our industry is going and how can you as a shop owner benefit. It is hosted by our wonderful partners, the Institute for Business Excellence out of Utah. They are Ogden, Utah, but they are all over the industry, really helping to grow and drive businesses forward. I'm excited to have you, Michael, and to hear this session. I do want to say, everybody who is joining, please feel free to ask us questions. I will pose them to Michael at the end. If I cannot get to them, if we run out of time because we have our after party that you don't want to miss, I will make sure that Michael and the team at the Institute get these questions and they will personally reach out to you. Michael, thank you so much for your time and your expertise, and we're glad to have
Absolutely.
you.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Amber. Thank you very much. I want to say thanks to you all for coming too. I know it's the end of a long day and it's great to spend this time with you. This is my favorite topic, the sort of the futuring of the industry, what's going on around us and how it pinches on us and then how we're responding from within. There's a key on this first slide I want to point out, and that is that when we think about this, when we at the Institute, what I've been working on for a few years at this point, was how do we as owner operators look at the changes that are coming in our industry and create something that is going to be what we would have our industry morph into. I'm going to talk about the outside forces. I'm going to talk about what's happening in terms of the chaos that's starting inside of our industry in response. And I think what really drives our thinking is how do we do this so that we, the owner operators, maintain as much control as we can, frankly, for as long as we can in the process of where we believe this is all headed, and going to unpack all that here at the end of the day. So thanks again for sticking around. I sometimes am accused of going very quickly through all of this stuff. So I'm going to slow down. We're going to go measure ourselves, take our time pacing wise. And I hope we can hit on some interesting things for everybody who's checked in with us. Today, I'm going to go through this in the little bit of time we have together. It's a very short time. I'm going to try to get some really fun stuff to think about in here, but I'm going to introduce myself real briefly to give you a sense of my context, where I come from, and then I want to put a sort of an industry idea in front of you. Then we're going to dig into three perspectives. Outside forces where third-party interests are increasingly pressing in on us, and I want to unpack that, talk about what that means for us and where it sort of drags us, whether we like it or not. The second is inside of our own industry, how things are changing, the old business as usual model that a lot of, particularly the folks that are my age, been around doing this 30, 40 years. It ain't going to be the same going forward as it has been. And again, I have lots of clients that say, hey, I'm an old guy. I don't consider myself that, but they're joking around. They said, I'm going to work my way out of this and make it the next guy's problem. And my response to that is, well, that's okay, but the next guy's going to have to understand this and pretty quickly. So let's all understand it together, and you can figure out what that handoff might look like so that the next group can succeed as well. And then the final thing, these two things answer the question, where is our industry going from today? And then I want to talk a little bit to the last question of how can you benefit? What does this mean for you owners and the key leaders who are logged in here? What are the future opportunities that we have, and what are the threats that we have if we don't figure out how to address them along the way? So this will be a good jam-packed 45 minutes, I hope. And then I'm going to wrap this up with an invitation to you guys to reach out. Context setting wise, just by background, I did not grow up in this industry. I'm 42 plus, working on my 43rd year, doing business strategy. I specialize in business growth. I spent time in my career in the private equity world with REITs. I do exit strategies and succession. A lot of what I do is human-centric. It's human-driven championship team building, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. My background, I'm now the Chief Strategy Officer at the Institute. I'll talk about how that happened in October here of 23 briefly. I came to this with my own brand, that I was out working in this industry with some of the larger players doing some of this private equity and merger and acquisition development work. I came from, my original heritage was the largest consulting firms. My last stop was Deloitte as a practice leader in the Pacific Northwest. I spent time, as I said, inside the private equity world as an exec at a global holding company. And then I started and sold a handful of different businesses in different industries just to exercise my entrepreneurial muscles for fun. So been around the horn a little bit. And again, the point of all that is just that I come to this industry with this outside view. And that's what I want to share with you guys today. My education background sort of was necessary to get where I started. And then I bring that to the table too, in terms of perspective. So I mentioned that I merged my company with the Institute. Cecil and Kent and I started talking in March, April of last year about combining our forces. What the Institute has done for 25 plus years, Cecil longer than that. And what I do is very complementary. So we decided to push the two brands together. We came out under a branded house model. I folded my brand into the Institute. They were bigger than I am, much more of a reputation in the market. I now serve internally, and I'm launching 3 new programs: the High Performance Group, the Merger and Acquisition Growth Group, and our Venture Strategy program as well. So separate conversations later. We can talk about that stuff if you're interested, but we're doing something here that, to our knowledge, isn't being done. A little moment here in March of last year, we had been working for 6-9 months on a private equity deal. A bunch of companies that were my clients came together. We put 5 of them together, got them a private equity investment partner. They launched what you may have heard of as Straightaway Tire and Auto, and they immediately became one of the largest automotive aftermarket consolidators in the market. So I was with those guys. I designed it. We went to private equity at the point where they signed an LOI. I sort of stepped away from it, and those guys have since completed the acquisitions and now have this new consolidator in place. So we've done this. I know what I'm talking about. This is where I came from, and just wanted you to know that's out there as well in terms of experience. This stuff is happening in our industry. These are very, very large projects. And again, this is to kind of introduce you to where we're going. What's in it for you? You participate in some of these things. There's a heck of a potential financial and career outcome for this. And again, these are just new roads in front of us that weren't here 15, 20 years ago. I'm going to talk about 3 perspectives today. I'm going to talk about the outside forces that are pushing in. That frames and kind of squeezes our balloon, right? The bubbles are coming out in different places than they have historically. I want to lean inside a little bit and talk about what this means to us inside the industry. Then I want to finish by talking to you owners and the key leaders about specifically what kind of opportunities, again, and what kind of threats are in front of us to pay attention to. I want to start kind of with this overview idea that there are changes in customer expectations and value generation. This is a list of 10 things that McKinsey, one of the premier strategy firms, researched. They have an automotive division that's global. And this is their short list of what's happening both to the OEMs and to the aftermarket that follows it. I'm a big fan of understanding what's happening to the OEMs. Why? Because we are, frankly, the tail on the dog of service, right? It's worth, and I'll show you on a slide to come, that in their own business, service is worth about 8% of the revenue that they make. So without selling cars, without financing cars, they wouldn't have a service department. We're out there in the aftermarket servicing vehicles as well. So in my opinion, as a strategist, where they go, pressures they're under, the decisions that they're making, they're going to have some fairly short impacts on where we are too. So this list from McKinsey serving the OEMs, I think, is a good kicking off point for today. Changes in the way customers expect and how they generate value at the OEM level. Digitization of the channels and the interfaces, the big data analytics, which we've heard of here in the industry for sure. Increasing importance of professionally managed fleets. This is a huge conversation about where the Ubers are going, where the Lyfts are going, where autonomous vehicles will take us. So that's a key factor they're talking about. The rise of emerging markets and all around the globe and a new service mindset. What does service, our business, mean in this new world that's being created? The second group of things, the second group of 4, is the emergence of next generation vehicles. Electrification is frankly shrinking the profit pool, and I'm not going to spend much time because of the time we have. Electrification is not working for the OEMs. They're losing money on every vehicle they create. It's very difficult for them. The engineering's not ready. And although they say, because the pressure from the high level investors is this is where we're going to go, the government says this is where we want to go. Of course, GM and Ford and Toyota say, sure, we'll go there with you, but it's not as easy for them because this isn't working. And again, those of you who are close to this understand what I'm talking about. Number 6, increasing importance of software. Requiring new competencies in the OEMs and in our shops. You guys know this. Autonomous is leading to fewer accidents, but shorter maintenance intervals, and connected vehicles enable predictive maintenance, right? They talk to the computer drives them home. And then the last thing is shifts in competitive power. I'm going to talk about the collapse of the OEM market. The consolidation is occurring among automotive manufacturing brands, just like it's beginning to happen here. And I'm going to unpack that in a little bit. And I'm also going to talk about how our own industry is consolidating and the integration that's occurring and what that means for us on the tail end of that. There's 7 trends I'm going to touch on here in our time together, and I don't have time to unpack them in depth. I will tell you what they are, though. I'm going to start here at the beginning from outside force standpoint, talking about automotive technology, talking about the aftermarket consolidation, that's us, and talking about the outside investment pressures, who's coming. Then I'm going to cover these other things: competitive advantage, human centricity, mastery, and breakthrough strategies before we get done here today. Accelerating industry trends, the first 3 of 7 I just showed you. Outside interests are these, right? There are new stakeholders who are here. Some of them are old, some of them are new. Our competitors, direct and indirect, we need to pay attention to. I'm going to say that because when I get into the slides to come, our industry is collapsing under the weight of the exiting baby boomers. It's collapsing in a good way. It's time for a reformation of our industry. And I'm going to unpack what that means. But the reality is that to be an effective competitor based on what the rules were 10 to 20 years ago, there's a longer list of what it takes to play in the world that's coming for us, right? We have direct competitors. We have indirect ones too. I mean, Apple's working on an electric car with a software company, not with a different software company, not with an automotive manufacturer. So there are strange things happening around us from outside that are going to impact on us. I mentioned the OEMs. I'm going to unpack that in a minute. Their world is very challenged at this point, and they are not going to be making the same cars the same way in the future that they have been. They have huge decisions to make, and there are huge investments in the decisions they make that if they get it wrong, they could be in a very difficult position, and I'll show you what I mean. The industry investors are here. We thought that these private equity guys would show up maybe 5-10 years from now, really. COVID accelerated this. Greenbrier was one of the first real big ones to kick off in the Phoenix area. Now Sun Automotive, a handful of others have followed, including the Straightaway project I mentioned to you. But private equity, those guys are on my back, right? I know where they come from. They know what I'm doing. Have you got any projects for me yet? Have you got any projects for me yet? And I'm talking the middle market and above. I'm not talking little private investors that are one-on-one. They're here and they want us to build projects. And again, my opinion is let's build owner-operator driven projects that are good for us and good for them, not leave it to them to figure out what our industry is going to turn into. Those are the consolidators. I will also say that, there is a large conversation to be had further down the road. We are rolling up as an industry like 40, 50 other industry verticals have. At the end of the day, look at collision, look at managed healthcare, look at the drugstores, the mom and pops, the bookstores that turned into the Borders and those kind of things. We're on the same path now, guys. We weren't for a long time, our little mom and pop industry out there on our own. Difficult business. You guys know it. You work inside of it. To me, we have one of the most complicated small businesses in the world, and those private equity investors know it. But here's what happened in COVID. Their high-end restaurants tanked. Their strip malls tanked. Everybody stayed home. Guess who was cranking along in our little business, just fixing cars? And they looked up and said, ooh, how much do you guys make in margins when you're doing well? 15, 20, 25% or more in nets every year, sustainable growth. We're in. And so now they're here and they want to work with you guys like you read about. So longer conversations later, buyer beware, be careful. The stories that you're going to get told are terrific from brokers and from PE reps. Understand it, take your time. And that's what we're here to help you do. But the end consolidator bullet here is to say, The expectation at the end is that the BlackRocks, the State Streets, the Vanguards will be the big owners of this industry at some point, 20, 25 years from now, just like most of the other industries that have rolled up. We can all say we don't like that. I understand a position if you took that position, but this is history repeating itself. And so again, with all this surrounding us, I want you to be aware that, we can all watch this and keep an eye on it and try to figure out how we can build something that we're proud of at the end. There are four primary technology drivers. You know these things: the connectivity part, the computer talks to the internet, talks to the manufacturer. The second is alternative drivetrains. Lots of questions about whether electric's going to be the game or not. If California plugged in all the cars that they wanted to have electric and they changed the whole thing over to the grid would collapse. We all know that. So the electric is not necessarily the future. There are other alternatives being worked on. The OEMs are struggling with this. Do we, don't we, do we, don't we? What commitment do we make? Toyota came back and said, this isn't going to work, right? GM originally, Mary Barra said, oh, we're all in. So this is a field at play, which we have all been aware of. Shared mobility, right? This idea that you can make a phone call and a car can come pick you up. I find it fascinating every time I jump in an Uber and I start talking to the driver that they're basically driving, and their driving pays for Uber trying to develop an autonomous driving bubble at the bottom. It's just interesting. It's interesting where we're going. It's interesting how all those pieces fit together. These are the CASA, what they call them in the strategic world, what the OEMs call them. These are the big things that are challenging these guys. I want to put this out there because it's a lot of detail, but I want you to understand how much the OEMs are struggling. There are four future states that the OEMs are considering. And again, please know we are the tail on the dog, that when they make a major shift, it's going to happen to us too in a fairly short period of time. The worst future state for them is the top left, where the OEM supplies third-party corporate mobility fleets, and really other people are in control of almost everything. All the OEMs are doing is basically selling a white label vehicle into the automotive and transportation system that they have very little control over. The next most desirable state, but the third least desirable one, is where the OEM collaborates with all of the other agents, that they have some control over what happenings. And again, the two axes here are OEM dominance across the horizontal, and the vertical is the degree of this CASA disruption, okay? So if CASA is disruptive and they have no control, it's the top left. If CASA is not that disruptive and they have no control, it's the bottom. They'd rather, if CASA is going to be a reality for them and they don't have any control, they'd rather live in the lower left than the top left, right? But as you work your way around, they're headed for the top right. That's what they want the most. Here, they've successfully built an omni-channel retail network where they have as much control as they can. They don't have full control. The top box is where they also have purchased the Ubers. They have Amazon directing any online traffic. Any of the Googles are directing traffic to them. Google's got 3 million, 4 million autonomous miles under its belt, right? There are very strange players out there that are working on this to try to have an ownership of the top right. The automakers want to be right here. If they don't play this right, they're going to be somewhere else on the graph, and here's why it matters. These are the financials of the future states. This is the one where the automotive manufacturers do the best. So you don't think they're having strategy meetings overnight with all the consultants in their big boardrooms trying to figure this out, because it's a shifting landscape. And again, we're right on the tail end of that. So I want you to know this is out there. It's fascinating stuff, and we can keep an eye on it now that we're kind of aware of all of it. What goes along with this is that the dealer business model is going down the tubes. The kids today don't want to sit in a showroom and argue with the finance department. They won't sit there all day and do it. They want the car delivered to the front of their house. So the reality here is everything is trending down in the dealer model. What's also happening is that the dealers are consolidating. I'll talk about that in a minute. I mentioned before that service for the OEMs is this tail on the dog. It's a grand total of about 8, almost 9% of the revenue that comes in is their service department. The service department is designed to keep their customers around long enough that the 3-year age of the car that the customer bought gets to the point where they start making recommendations in the service department that they should go and consider replacing the vehicle. And then they're directed over to the showroom and they buy another one. And then that vehicle enters the used car market. And then most of the time we get a chance to see it. So this 9% that they invest in this has an upstream return for them. They make their most money financing vehicles. They make the second most amount of money building them. And then this tail is there to serve, repeat, rinse, repeat, right? That's what it's about. Now I want to go to the outside forces of our privately held businesses. And those of you who've seen these slides, I'll go through them briefly, but this sort of sets a context of where are we with our privately held mom and pop automotive service companies. There are 6 million privately held businesses in the United States, and it's estimated that 2/3 of them are baby boomer owned. That's 4 million plus businesses for about 10 trillion in US wealth. That's a lot of money. That's BlackRock's total investment. Baby boomer owners born between 46 and 64 this year, aging 60 to 78. Guys, in 2016, half of them said they wanted to be out in the next 1 to 2 years. 3/4 of the boomers wanted out the next 3 to 5. So what you see here is that because of COVID, because of the scenarios with the economy and the change between Trump and Biden, and I'm not going political, but there's a lot of disruption here. A lot of baby boomer owners have stuck around. With COVID, they said, hey, here's a chunk of government money, sit on it and stabilize yourself. Well, boomers stick around, see what they're going to do with that, right? These guys are overdue to leave. So what it means is there's pressure on the system for them to be up and out, and the pressure is rising now that the investors are here, making them offers, some of them that they can't refuse. Here's a sobering fact that I want you guys to hear. The private equity world itself says 80 to 85% of these privately held companies, of the 4 million of them, have not been run in such a way that there's any value in them to buy. What that means is that the owners use them like cash machines and didn't invest back in their businesses. And so in essence, an investor looks in and says, it's at best a desperate asset sale. There's nothing here that I want to invest in. I'll fold my arms and wait. And when you close the front door, I'll pick up the pieces and I'll pay a lot less for it and get the same value to me as an investor. Guys, that's 3.2 million businesses. If it's an 80% failure to sell rate, 8 trillion in wealth. That isn't going to change hands. If we carry those same numbers, the 80% of the baby boomers down to our industry, about 235,000 companies, we're looking at around 160,000 boomer-owned businesses, maybe more in our business. We've all been to BDG meetings and looked around the room, right? If it's just an 80% failure rate, look at this. 130,000 of our competitors across the country will go out of business. They won't sell. They'll basically lock their doors and walk away. There's nothing to buy. 55% of our industry. And the thought was it was supposed to be 3 to 5 years. We're guessing it's going to be 3 to 5 years out in front of us now, especially when the 24 election is over. You know, it's hard to tell what's going to happen, but that'll have some impact. But there's going to be a big rush, we think, to leave when all the dust settles on that. In our industry, what it means is that we have all of our employees, our team members, our customers, and the markets that these guys are in will be up for grabs. So there's a lot of change in the pipeline happening right in front of our nose. I say to people in meetings like this, if you drive around your neighborhood and you look and you see your competitors closing their doors and locking up, this is the indication that it's begun. And I get people come back and say, man, I had no idea. It's astounding how many of us are leaving the industry. It's like, yep, it's underway. This is our bell curve, guys. And if we do the math, here's our 55% failure rate. The single point I want to make here for you is if you're an average company right now, by the time all that pink dust settles on the left-hand side and those guys have worked their way out, the middle level company now will be the worst player in the business in the bell curve of the future, right? I want that to hit home. What we're looking at is how do we help all of you guys to become the top 20th percentile, top 5%, and the top 1% who are going to lead the industry. We want you guys to understand what's coming and how to get yourselves positioned for it and make your own decisions based on your exit and succession strategies, what makes sense for you to do. But we have lost track of the fact that this 235,000 bell curve ain't going to be the same 5-10 years from now. Here's where we're going, guys. This is the beverage industry. You can see all your favorite candy brands, whatever. Look around and you can see that they're owned by a handful of companies. We're headed in this direction. This is happening at the OEM level too. If you look up at Stellantis on the top right side, second bullet down, out of the Netherlands, they're gobbling up brands. The automotive companies know that with this autonomous giant fleet, connectivity controlled fleets that are out there driving people around, that they're amassing volume here, just like we're talking about amassing volume in our industry as well for investment plays. So this is happening to the automotive manufacturers at the same time the brands are rolling up. What it means in our industry, guys, in the yellow box is this: that in the future, each of us, right, we're going to be consolidating, where there are going to be a shrinking number of players in our business, and each of them are going to get bigger. The scale part, steadily larger. The complexity of larger companies, bigger databases of customers, bigger teams, the vendors and suppliers, the complexity of that's going to go up. And the sophistication of your companies is going to go up too. Take this the right way. Fixing cars and selling car fixes is not going to be what this is about in the future. I say to my clients, you guys are private equity investors of your own company. And I want you to think that way, because this is how the industry has turned. And the stuff in the yellow box is what we can all expect to be coming in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Exit models exist now that weren't here before. 1 and 2 is the old traditional way of doing it, right? You can close the business and sell the assets like we talked about. If you're in that lower 55%, you can sell it to family, team, or friends in whole or in part. But here's all the new stuff, right? You can sell to one of these roll-up firms, number 3. You can be your own roll-up firm and get your own private equity partner in number 4. And that takes some time to get scale to be able to do that, but there are huge returns in that. And you can do number 5, which is to get some other sizable and excellent players and join together, scale quicker into a single project like we did with the Straightaway project, and put yourself out there too. So guys, what I'm saying, where it's like, what's in this for me? 3, 4, and 5 didn't even exist 10 years ago. And so this is what we can, where we should be looking, and how you should be thinking about your potential future. Inside the industry, I put the title up here in the title: chaos and self-interest is developing. What we used to count on, the way things worked, is now changing. Our key leaders, the young people behind us in the pipeline, for us older owners, right? I never owned this business, I've owned others. Those guys that would have been our natural transfer point. When I meet an owner who says, I don't want to know this, I'm just going to leave, I say to them, that's awesome. I get that. If I were you, I would think the same thing. But here's the deal. The person you're going to hand this to is going to have to figure this out in pretty short order, particularly if they can't afford to buy this from you and you're going to do an owner financing thing. Guys, if they can't figure this out, you know who's going to be out of retirement and back in the shop again, picking up a broken company at that point? Potentially you. So it isn't just as easy as walking away here and just leaving it to the next generation. My recommendation is, if you want to leave, let's get the people who are in the pipeline behind you prepared to understand what they're buying. To me, it's ethical and only fair that they know what they're buying into in terms of where we're going. Potentially stick around a little longer, help them get ready, and you guys will have a better transaction, and they have a better chance of making this thing work than if we just kind of cut and run. Do what you need to do. And I'm not going to judge anybody for it, but understand these things are changing in our industry. The team leaders, right? What it means for team members in these consolidating companies that are coming, there's going to be more career opportunity. And I don't mean in the same job, in the same company, doing the same thing. I'm talking about when these consolidators open up and start opening up new geographies and territories. There are layers of leadership that will develop. There are career paths here for our people in this industry that have never been here before. The families that lean into us, their team members' families, have a huge stake in us figuring this out. And it's not lost on us that we want you guys to know how to succeed. Customers are the same way, right? They're looking at us to guide them in how they steward their vehicles. We that are at the top of the industry know that there are transactional customers, there are brand committed customers, and then there's your covenant customer, who's your loyal brand ambassador. That third level is the one that we want in our top sort of championship team companies. Their families, their thinking, their meaning that they attach to the business that they're looking to work with in our business, the meaning that they have in their life, the alignment of what we believe in. That's where this industry is going. And I'm going to hit that here in a couple of minutes before I stop for questions. Our vendors, guys, we have a whole bunch of them: the parts companies, the tool companies, oil, tires, all that. The service providers, the banks, the attorneys, the accountants, the point of sale system folks, the technology people, the marketing companies. Our entire industry infrastructure is being shaken at this point by all the changes that are coming. So just know that inside now people are starting to think about their own self-interest. It's like, I'm going to go down this road. I'm going to go down that one. Guys, it's natural in free economy to do that. This is desirable, but we need to be aware that what we're used to isn't going to be the same. And even when we go to a BDG meeting, the guys in the room are starting to think about extra different things than we used to when we showed up to do that 3, 4, 5 years ago. We've covered these two trends from an outside perspective. Now I want to hit on these as we sort of move toward conclusion here. Competitive advantage is a big deal. And for you owners and the key leaders, I want you to think about this. I had a meeting when I first got into this industry about 7 years ago. I was invited to help a dear friend who taught me how your industry works from the inside. I brought to him what came from the outside, and he said, will you help me to look at my 3-shop system at that point, like you would have. I used to work at Deloitte. We were in Seattle. The Fortune 100 was our client base, Boeing, Microsoft, Amazon. I worked with all these guys, Nordstrom, Freightliner, PACCAR. They were our clients. They said, will you look at our little shop system, our single little shop system, like you would have those companies? I said, sure. So I brought this whole SWOT analysis process to him, and we unpacked it. And it worked out so well for him that in the BDG that he was a part of, I was invited to start doing some teaching. I say all that as background to say I stood up at one meeting and I said, can we talk competitive advantage for a minute? 70 owners in the room. And they said, sure. And I said, guys, I want to make a list of what your unique competitive advantage components are. And just around the room, people volunteered. They said, well, we have a 36,000-mile warranty, 3 years. And somebody said, well, we can beat that. Our parts company does a 48,000 4-year. Okay, wrote it all up on the board. A faithful facilitator writer wrote it all up on the whiteboard. After all this list of things, and there were 2 pages worth were done, I went back. I said, okay, can I ask you guys a question? This first one, how many people in the room have something like that? And every hand went up. I said, okay, I crossed it out. So let's go down to the second one. Again, how many people in this room have some version of this? Every hand went up, I crossed them off. Did you realize at the end of 2 sheets, there was nothing on the board? I said, guys, listen, unique competitive advantage is what this is all about, right? And there's work to be done here. Our industry has been standardized for so long that we tend to do things the same way. And our competitive advantage is geographic. If it's within 3 miles of our customer, they tend to come to me. If it's 3 miles closer to somebody else, they tend to go to that person. There has to be a different way of doing this. And I'm telling you that where we're going with this consolidation, we're going to have to figure out what these unique competitive advantages are, because if you're going to be out in front of this, leading it in your marketplace, you're going to have to tell a different story. So there's a process to go through here, and it's a very important one to break free of the standard way this industry does things and to start doing things outside the box, headed to the future that we're headed to. Number 2 is human centricity. I'm going to tell you guys that the greatest competitive advantage that I know, I'm cheating, looking down at this prior bubble that we talked about, is human centricity. The greatest championship teams on the earth, professional sports, companies, communities, whatever, are driven by the same kind of processes. We know that a human-centric organization driven by the motivation of the people from within themselves because they believe in what the community or the company is about, outperform significantly the rest of the pack. We know exactly what human centricity is psychologically. We know what it is from a business application standpoint. We know exactly how to help lift you guys up into having this championship team in your marketplace. And it's a huge factor to be able to make the call out to the rock stars and the unicorns in our industry. You know, another thing they put on the board was, what are the difficulties in this industry? We can't find good talent. I said, is there no good talent? They said, no, it's out there. We just can't find it. And I said, can you not find it? They said, well, we can kind of find it, but we can't get it to come to us. And if we do, we can't get it to stay. I go, aha, now you're onto something. Now you're onto something, because when the unicorns come to see who you are and they find out you're like everybody else, they go right back to where they were before, hunkered down, putting up with the pain and getting their job done for what means something to them. And so I'm telling you guys that human centricity is a great competitive advantage. I also say that you have to have a mastery-driven culture. We know this very well in the technician world, that the unskilled to apprentice to journey person to master, there's a pathway there. Guess what? Companies can take that pathway too as an entity. Individual pathways for each employee, each team member should be laid out along that. Service advisors, store managers, area managers, regional general managers, right? Starting at the beginning at the bottom and working your way up. There is a process, and each of the layers learns differently. Each of them needs something different in leadership. You build a mastery-driven culture, and that is what the unicorns, the rock stars are looking for. So again, we know what mastery is. We understand the psychology of it. We know how to help you guys set that up to start to draw this talent out of the woods, if you will. I made a joke in a meeting. I said, you guys are standing in the field in the middle of a bunch of deer, good looking ones, by the way, but you're making deer sounds and you can't figure out why there's no unicorns or rock stars here. You're surrounded by deer because you're doing it like everybody else. And so where do the unicorns live? And they're like, they live in the forest. I said, right. And how do you get them to come out? They said, make unicorn sounds. And we all laughed. I said, exactly. That's how you get them to come out. Mastery is a unicorn sound. So there's a way to get there from here, guys. And these trends, again, if you embrace this and the rest of our industry is collapsing around you and you get bigger as a competitor, you don't even have to get bigger. If you understand this, you'll even be of interest to somebody who wants to bring you in as they get bigger, right? But there are keys here to how we're going to be different in the future. And that's what I want to put in front of you. Last thing is breakthrough strategy. Put all this together, all these other 6 trends. I put it at the top because to me, it belongs in the top. Okay, so what? All 6 of these things are here. What do I do with it? You need to outthink the people that you're competing with. This is not a zero-sum game. Everybody can win in your community. But you know what? If I had a choice to be following the people who are determining the direction of my market or leading the direction of my market, I'd rather be the guy that's out in front, setting the pace, going to a place that our customers, our community recognizes what we're doing and wants to join us, and having the rest of the guys scratching their heads going, gosh, I wish I could figure those guys out. I'd sure like to be a part of that. I'm going to say this too, mapping our futures. I'm going to wrap it here. I'm coming to a question and answer conclusion. And you guys inside of my company will be proud that I have actually finished on time for a change instead of asked for more time. They're mapping our futures. We have unique opportunities, and I'm going to present this to you to think at these levels. There's 4 levels that I'd like you to end thinking about when we depart today. One is the individual level, the owners, the key leaders who are probably on this call. Guys, the team members that are in your companies don't know what we're talking about today. It's not that they can't understand it. They've never been exposed to it. What we're talking about is a radical shift in what this industry means. And we all know the problem we have finding good talent. These kids can go to trade school and graduate with a skill, and in most other trade industries make more of a paycheck than we have been paying them in our industry. This is a chronic problem. Guys, where we're going in this industry, with the financial opportunities that are going to be available to us as we consolidate and grow bigger and career paths manifest for them, this is going to be the sweet spot in the trade business is our industry if we play this right. And if you think that about your team members and realize these kids, these young people, that whether they're old or young, these people who work for us, who deserve to be led into the future in a win-win way with us, they're there. And guys, all of us that have families, they're right behind us. They need the paychecks. They need us to thrive. And we want this, and I want you to think about it at the individual level. The second tier is your company, your brand that you owners have worked so hard with your key leaders and your teams to build over the years. As you acquire other people's brands, these owners who put their lives into their business leave. You're there to help them to take and to steward their brands and have the meaning that they built continue. Whether you get into the spin-off business as an owner and you start co-investing with some of your people, whether you get into the acquisition business, merger and acquisition wise, your company has a future too. So it's all the individuals, it's what you built as an entity and what that can be in the future. It's the markets that you're in. Guys, the footprints are going to get bigger, right? If you're in 2 stores, could you be 10? Would you want to be 50, right? And you roll your eyes and think I'm being crazy here, but I've got clients that started with 2, they're at 7, they go to 12, they're on their way to 20, and they got a plan for 50. And after that, they're going to pause and take 5 deep breaths and figure out what they want to do after that. This is in front of us like it's never been before. And so there is a way to play that game. You have to merge and acquire. You have to buy acquisitions, not merge. You have to buy acquisitions like you're a professional consolidator. You cannot do what we used to call the multi-shop model. Anybody who says multi-shop model to you, I want you to stop and go, that's as old school as it gets, right? You're not buying new Victorian houses in different neighborhoods and building a cute little community. The consolidator model is to build a skyscraper. You build a foundation with solid peers and poles, and those are your leaders. That's your company, it's your financials, it's your SOPs. You build this thing so that you can buy new floors and put them one by one on top. And every time you do, you then configure that floor to look at the end of it. You want to build a never-ending skyscraper. How many floors you want to put on it? That's entirely up to you. If you want to retire now with what you have, that's fine. If you want to build a village of Victorian houses, that's okay too. If you want to play this game in a serious way, then you have to build skyscrapers. And that's the market concept, right? What is your footprint? What's your future footprint? If you're going to expand your markets, which direction do you head in? If you're in the country, then you turn left and you go to the big city. You turn right and you go out to the even poorer country than you're in now. Turn to the left and go to the big city, because that's where the consolidators are going to be headed, right? This has an impact on where you're doing business and the opportunities that you have. All these things come into play. Last thing I want to say on this page is the communities that we serve. Guys, the guys that are on this Zoom, probably all of you, because you have enough moxie to sit here for 6 hours plus listen to me at the end. You guys have communities that you serve. You're here for a reason. Who you serve, what they need, what they're going to buy, those are all future considerations that are different than what you've had, what we've had in the past, right? How do you become number one? How do you earn your way to the top? Is it marketing cleverness where you have enough of your friends call in and you become the Google 5-star winner of the best shop in town? Yeah, whatever. That's a marketing ploy. Are you actually the best shop in town? Do people come to you because they trust you, because you stand for something that's meaningful to them? You realize that the millennials will go to a business, pay more money to subscribe and buy service from somebody that believes the same thing that they believe in the world. So it's time to stand up and talk about what we believe in. And you know what? You're going to lose some customers when you do that, and you're going to gain the most loyal brand ambassadors when you do that you've ever shaken a stick at. And when you have those customers that even if you screw it up, as soon as you make it right, they love you even more. Those are the customers, guys, that the private equity investors will eventually want to invest in, because they become their customers for life. And that's what we're building in the marketplace. This is a different thought process. Okay. Wisdom of the day I want to leave here is, Stephen Covey wrote it in a book, but this has been around in my business strategy business for a hell of a long time. We always begin with the end in mind. So I want you to think exit. I want you to think succession. I want you to begin to think about, what's my life look like when I'm done here? What does my business look like after I've turned it over? What is the legacy that I want to leave behind? And I mean, not a sales pitch, but a sales pitch, right? We're good at this. We have the sheets to fill out. We have the process to help you go through. And I want you to be thinking long-term. We back into, we do the futuring first, right? Let's talk about what you want, what you need, where you want to go. Then we stop and we say, well, what you got? And those are the first two steps, right? Where do you want to go and what do you have? Third step is, what's the gap in between them? You got to identify it, understand it. The fourth step is you work to close the gap. All of a sudden you realize that what you used to have is now what you dreamed you would have. And guess what? We turn around, we do it again. Step 5 is rinse, repeat, right? What you have, you used to believe in, is now your as is. You do some futuring, you do a gap assessment, you do a gap closure, and then we move it up again. So this is an endless opportunity. I am 1 minute ahead of schedule. I think I've got wrap up and invitation. This is my wrap up I want to leave with you. And Amber, thanks for logging in. I want to leave this idea. Da Vinci was one of my heroes, and he had this quote: one can have no smaller or greater mastery than mastery of oneself. I will tell you guys, we teach a leadership intensive. It's a 3-day thing. Your brains will melt out of your head. But what we teach is that what you believe is your ceiling. We behave as we believe. So if you have limited beliefs that came from the way the industry used to work, or your childhood, or what your mean boss taught you the first 10 years you worked there, all that stuff becomes the ceiling. If you own your company, your ceiling is your company's ceiling. Your ceiling is the ceiling of the people that work for you. So my challenge that I have for you is, start thinking about what you believe. What could you be if you dreamed big? And as soon as you bump into a disbelief in yourself, say, do I really want to hold on to that, or do I want to reframe it and let it go and go higher? And I'm just telling you, that's out there. This is my invitation to you. I only put this back up here to show you the yellow box. If you want to reach out, I'm here. That's my email at the Institute. It's my cell phone number. Go straight to me. Call me if you want. email me if you want. We'll get on the phone. We'll talk a little bit. That's my closing invitation. Amber, I'm done. End of story here. Blue
You
screen at the end.
nailed
Okay.
it. You nailed it. This was
Right on the
incredibly
minute.
insightful. You definitely dropped some mics in some of the quotes that you had, and the insights that you've brought. And I know that this is a really big topic in the industry, as you highlighted, and there is a lot of question marks, that our owners and the industry has. What does this mean for my business? Where should I go? Who should I trust? What should I be building? And I think, believing in your worth and building loyalty was something that you said, and building a team that matters behind you. So I love that you tied in really nicely at the end. What could you be if you dreamed big? Really kind of set the stage for the theme that we've had today, embodying success. So guys, as Michael said, his contact is here. Of course, if you guys are on a lot of our webinars, you know how close we are with the Institute. So if you didn't jot this down, please feel free to reach out to me at Amber at AutoLeap. I will personally get you introduced with them over there. Really appreciate your time, Michael. And I know you are
Love it.
coming from us from Brazil. So
I
it
am.
is really like a worldwide event, and we are so thankful
It's
to have you. It is. It's really
it's
cool.
an international event. That's right.
Yes, I love that. So thank you guys so much. We are joining our after party, guys. We are going to be announcing winners of all of our scavenger hunts, the photo booths, and not only that, we will be sharing with you our big league competition, where we are going to be announcing 3 lucky winners who shared their story about how AutoLeap has helped grow their business. So please do bring your tissues, because it's going to be awesome. So thank you, Michael. And I look forward to meeting you
Thanks,
in
everybody.
person. All right. Bye,
Me
guys.
too, Amber. Take care, guys. Take
All
care.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.